Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this evening. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Space Flight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Our Stephen Young is running the technical operations of our broadcast tonight. Once again, our launch photographers Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane have tonight off, given this is a West Coast launch. But if you'd like to follow them, you can find them over on X. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. and Adam at Aburn NYC. We are T-minus 27 minutes, 19 seconds and counting away from SpaceX's second launch attempt of the day, hoping to make it a double header from coast to coast. First up to bat, of course, was the Starlink 8-11 mission, launching from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, and now less than 27 minutes will be the turn for NROL 113. This is the third launch of what the National Reconnaissance Office calls its, quote, proliferated architecture. Reporting from Reuters and others suggests that the payload on board this and the other, quote unquote, proliferated architecture missions for the NRO are what SpaceX has called their Starshield satellites, essentially a government and national security bent version of the Starlink satellites. However, important to note that the National Reconnaissance Office themselves, given the nature of the mission, has not commented and confirmed publicly that, in fact, these are Starshield satellites. However, worth noting that the timeline of the mission today is pretty darn similar to a standard Starlink mission that we've seen recently. So it seems to lend credence to the reporting. But again, the National Reconnaissance Office, just as mostly a matter of policy, is not commenting on either the payload or their suppliers. Reuters reports that the Starshield satellites are done through a partnership between SpaceX as well as Northrop Grumman. Currently, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff of the mission at 8:20 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That is 11:20 p.m. Eastern, 03:20 UTC. As we're kicking things off, certainly appreciate the nearly 3,000 of you who are watching live tonight. If you haven't already, if you could do us a huge favor and click that like button. It allows the YouTube algorithm to bring this live coverage to more folks, show that those of you who are here are engaged, and hopefully we'll bring a few more people on in as we continue on with our live coverage. We're also powered by a wonderful channel member community, highlighted by our wonderful moderators, Astro Joe, Astro Jen, Callistia Lee. Appreciate you all being here this evening. In fact, Astro Joe marking 26 months as a channel member, saying, nice to join you for a launch at a reasonable time frame for kids and work again. And isn't that just lovely? Want to welcome in some other members of our channel member community. So thanks to folks like Jeff Hansen, Deborah Reese, Big816, The Rocket Girl, Patty Chichil. Let's see who else we have tonight. I'm sure some other folks will cruise on in. See Butterfly joining us. Bubba Ray, good to see you both. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from the Cape in 4K. I'll just note, as far as a bit of programming over on our 24-hour live stream channel, that is Launchpad Live. In the 4-quadrant box there, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, well, I say you can see, it's a little bit dark right now, but That's where the Pegasus barge is currently situated. Now that it has arrived at the turn basin at the press site, NASA will spend parts of Friday and Saturday offloading the components for the Artemis missions, Artemis 2, 3, and 4. So be sure to keep an eye out on that channel for that offloading process, which again will begin early tomorrow morning. I'm going to briefly thank, let's see, Callistia Lee, Jeff Hansen for both gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships apiece. Appreciate the two of you. And to our 10 News channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Callistia and Jeff in the live chat if you haven't already. Speaking of Jeff, marking 7 months as a channel member with us. Jeff says, go Vandy, go SpaceX, go Falcon 9, go NROL 113. Speaking of the mission, let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline here as SpaceX is stepping on through its countdown. They have noted that fueling is in fact underway in this Falcon 9 rocket, which means they're committing to a T0 at 8:20 p.m. Pacific, the start of the window today. If for whatever reason SpaceX is unable to move forward with this launch attempt for whatever reason may crop up potentially, they do have a 24-hour backup opportunity essentially with a window that opens up at excuse me 7:58 p.m. Pacific. Back to the timeline now. The call for fueling was made at about the T-minus 38-minute mark, although SpaceX does their poll electronically, so it seems like they were in a good position to do so today. They went ahead and made that call a little bit early, but whenever the call is made, fueling starts, as you see on the screen, is the T-minus 35-minute mark with the loading of RP1 or rocket-grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, and liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes, they start loading cryogenic helium on board the pressure vessels for the first stage. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. That process begins in the second stage a few minutes after that. T-minus 23 minutes, second stage RP1 load concludes. Then at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, the most recent event that just happened. It's when the strong back chill down process begins. We see that visually as the so-called big vent that comes up at about the T-minus 20 minute, 20 second mark. And that sets up second stage LOX load to begin at T-minus 16 minutes. T-minus 7 minutes is when the chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines gets underway. That process involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, the strong back retract sequence begins. Here at Vandenberg, it starts the same, the clamp arms opening up underneath the payload fairings, but here at Vandy, the transporter erector at the strong back reclines about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. About 3 minutes out, the first stage LOX tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute later. At that point, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, when you hear the call out for Falcon 9 being in startup, it means control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are being brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlins are healthy and ignite, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a T0 liftoff. Coming up at 8:20 p.m. Pacific, 11:20 p.m. Eastern, 03:20 UTC, or in other words, T minus 18 minutes and 12 seconds. Currently T minus 17 minutes, 11 seconds and counting. About a minute away from second stage LOX load beginning. Let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 is going to fly once it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? This is going to feel very reminiscent of a Starlink launch, lifting off from Space Launch Complex 4 East over at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Similar to many of the Starlinks we've seen fly from here, Falcon 9 is going to be heading in a southeasterly trajectory along the coast of California and Mexico as it makes its ascent. That orange track is the path of the first stage booster. After stage separation, it will make an attempt to land on the drone ship. Of course, I Still Love You. This will be the 20th landing for this particular booster, tail number 1063 in the SpaceX fleet. Let's talk a little bit more about its history as we move on. Worth noting, this will be the 100th landing of a booster on this particular drone ship if successful tonight. SpaceX also wants to recover the payload fairings. It saves about $6 million for a recovery effort. They splashed down in the Pacific Ocean waters under this port of parachutes, as you see demonstrated in this image on the right-hand side of your screen. This is what it looks like as fairing halves are brought aboard one of SpaceX's recovery vessels. SpaceX is in the process of working to certify both its fairing halves as well as its boosters for up to 40 flights each. Of course, the closest they've gotten is 23 successful launches and 22 successful landings. B-1062, unfortunately, bit the dust before it could proceed any further along that reusability path. SpaceX still working on the drone ship that bore the brunt of that landing. It's currently still docked at Port Canaveral. Meanwhile, the other East Coast drone ship, of course, just read the instructions. It was used for the Starlink 8-11 mission earlier today. And so it will start making its way back into port over the next day and some change. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank the now more than 7,000 of you who are joining with us live. Appreciate you being with us on a Thursday evening. Hope you've all had a good work week. And for those who've just gone back to school or maybe are a couple weeks in, hopefully the new semester or quarter, trimester, however your school or university is calling them, hopefully it's all going well for you. Want to welcome in a few new channel members. Welcome to James Fowley joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Sarah Jones clocking in at the spacecraft commander level. Really appreciate that level of support, Sarah. And a welcome to Meg McGilroy joining us at the pad leader level. So welcome aboard to the three of you. We're very glad to have you with us. And a big thanks to Cindy Sawyer for a very generous $20 super chat. Really appreciate you supporting us at that level, Cindy. Who's given a shout out to the rest of the Sawyer family, especially John. Hello, John. And a welcome as well to Skipping Dog 1, joining us with membership at the mission specialist level. Realized I neglected to mention this earlier, but if you have a comment or question as well, you'd like to pass along, and your comment or question ideally relevant to spaceflight is appropriate to be on the show, we'd love to bring you into the conversation, give us some interesting things to talk about as we continue on through the count. And you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that is always greatly appreciated. Just taking a look at some of the comments in the live chat. James must have joined a little bit later in our Starlink coverage this morning. I was very much present at the beginning of our coverage, and then SpaceX, likely due to weather, punted the launch time of that mission by about 3 hours. So unfortunately, I had an assignment to attend to over at, if you happen to see some of our behind the scenes photos, if you're a member of the Discord, over at Launch Complex 39B, some Artemis related stuff. So keep an eye on the channel for some of that coming in the not too distant future. But you were in the more than capable hands of my colleague and Spacefly Now editor, Stephen Young. So it's always reassuring to know that I can step aside as duty calls, and y'all are in more than capable hands. Speaking of capable, we are T minus 11 minutes, 17 seconds and counting. SpaceX is going to be launching this booster right here, tail number 1063, for a 20th time with this mission. So while we've got some time, let's go ahead and run down its flight history to date while we still have the time to do so. First launching back on November 21st of 2020 with the Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich mission. This was a radar altimeter that was developed in partnership between NASA and EUMETSAT. Michael Freilich was the former director of NASA's Earth Science Division. That was followed up on May 26th of 2021 with the Starlink L-28 mission, followed up by a planetary defense launch. That was NASA's DART, or Double Asteroid Redirect Test mission, sent to see if we could change the trajectory of an asteroid, and spoiler alert, we can. That'll be followed up actually later this year by a mission from the European Space Agency called Hera, which is set to launch in October. Essentially a follow-up mission to take a close look at the asteroid impacted by DART, to look at that impact crater with a little more detail and specificity, as well as the debris cloud caused by that impact. So look forward to that mission and the coverage we've got coming up for it as that develops. Following that was a string of Starlink missions for this booster. Those were Starlink 4-11 on February 25th, 4-13 on May 14th, 3-1 on July 11th of 2022, 3-4 on August 31st, 4-31 on October 28th, Starlink 2-5 on February 17th. That was followed up by a rideshare mission called Transporter 7, which launched on April 15th of 2023. Next up was the Iridium Next 9/OneWeb 19 mission. In fact, there'll be a OneWeb 20 mission launching the last of the satellites manufactured at the Airbus OneWeb satellite facility here in Florida. It's coming up a little bit later this year. Next, we had the Starlink 5-13 mission. That was followed by the second flight for the Space Development Agency's Tranche 0 constellation. And then we are back to Starlink land for this booster. We've got 7-4 on October 9th, 7-7 on November 20th, 7-11 on January 24th, 7-17 on March 11th, 8-7 on May 14th, and most recently Starlink 9-3 on July 12th, which of course brings us to the mission on tap today, NROL 113, coming up in just about 7.5 minutes.
Which is currently stationed in the Pacific.
Currently T-minus 4 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. So you can see we're getting some live pictures now at the pad there at Space Launch Complex 4 East. The clamp arms underneath the payload fairings are opening up, and you can see the transporter erector now reclining back. Next fueling milestone, of course, will be the conclusion of first stage liquid oxygen load. That's going to wrap up at about the T-minus 3 minute mark. Fueling on the Falcon 9 will conclude at about T-minus 2 minutes. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank the now more than 17,000 of you who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, we'd appreciate it if you could hit that like button as we're in the last few minutes before liftoff. And being that this is a clear night at Vandenberg, hopefully the weather is cooperating wherever you are in the southwestern United States. If you are able to get some good pictures or video of this Falcon 9 once it takes flight, be sure to tag us on Threads or Twitter. Love to see what you capture. Do have confirmation of stage 2 LOX load complete. The vehicle is going to be in startup in about 30 seconds. The call for ground gas closeouts, which you can see here coming from the strong back. Want to quickly thank just a couple of people for your support this evening. Thanks to Dingbold for $5 super chat. I'm Lita as well, saying the thrill of it all. And a thanks to Lori Jones Wilson for a $2 super chat as well. Have the call, the Falcon 9 is in startup. We're less than a minute to liftoff, so we'll come back to the live chat on the other side of liftoff. SpaceX says they're tracking no issues, and we do have a go for launch on this mission. As we come into the final 30 seconds, let's go ahead and listen into the SpaceX feed for final countdown and liftoff. We'll be back on the other side with some additional commentary. Let's listen in.
T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff of Falcon 9. Go NROL 113.
Vehicle is pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
If you're just joining us, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Space Launch Complex 4 East, as you can hear on your screen, and we are getting some awesome shots of ascent. We've also heard a few call-outs so far from Mission Control.
Nominal power and telemetry.
Including that everything is looking nominal from both a power and telemetry standpoint. Now, in just a few moments, we're going to throttle down the engines
Supersonic.
in preparation for max Q. And with that call-out, we hear that Falcon 9 is moving faster than the speed of sound.
Max Q.
There's that max Q call out. As you may have heard us mention before, max Q is a critical flight milestone because this is the moment.
And a good liftoff of the Falcon 9 so far. At this point, SpaceX is going to step into a few different events in fairly rapid succession. First will be First stage main engine cutoff coming up at T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds. That'll be followed a few seconds later by stage separation, and then second stage engine start, SES-1, at T plus 2 minutes 36 seconds, and then fairing deployment at the 3-minute mark. Given that these are NRO satellites, I'm guessing SpaceX probably will not be showing upper stage views. And yep, do hear commentary from the SpaceX commentator that there are no upper stage views, as certainly thought was going to be the case. Less than 15 seconds away from MECO. Here you see MECO. You see stage separation. And the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. There go the deployment of the hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering. Do have confirmation of fairing separation. Again, because these are NRO satellites, SpaceX is not providing upper stage views. That's why they're sticking with the first stage booster in full screen here. Those bursts that you're seeing in between the grid fins, those are the cold gas thrusters, which help SpaceX adjust the attitude or the positioning of the booster as it orients itself for a touchdown on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. Coming up in a few minutes. The next big milestone is coming up at T plus 6 minutes and 13 seconds. Just about 2 minutes from now. Fortunately, the weather here in California, much better than what we had over here in Florida today. So an on-time departure of the Falcon 9 is always a welcome thing. That booster preparing to make its way back down. The entry burn, again, starting at T plus 6 minutes and 13 seconds. That burn will see the reignition of 3 of the engines on the Falcon 9's first stage. As you watch the speedometer over on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see that number drop rapidly as the entry burn gets underway. You can see the first stage booster has reached its apogee. The altitude meter also dropping as well. This is a view from inside the inner stage looking up at the booster. Now less than a minute away from the entry burn beginning. As we mentioned, SpaceX will not only be endeavoring to recover this first stage booster using the drone ship, of course, I Still Love You. They're also looking to recover the payload fairings. Coming up on that entry burn in just a few seconds. Good beginning of the entry burn, this lasting about 20 seconds. There's the conclusion of that entry burn. Next, the landing burn is coming up in just a little more than a minute. It's coming up at the 8-minute mark. T plus 8 minutes. The booster should touch down on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you about T plus 8 minutes, 22 seconds. Do you recall that the stage 1 FTS has been saved to the flight termination system? No longer needed at this stage in flight. So far, all moving nominally with this mission, as coming up on the landing burn, now less than 30 seconds away. The first stage now is transonic, meaning it's traveling below the speed of sound. You can see the speedometer, bottom left-hand corner of your screen, continues to drop dramatically. Coming up on 10 seconds, the landing burn beginning. Landing burn now underway. You can see the drone ship on the right-hand side of your screen. And for a 20th time, booster bead 1063 is down safely on the drone ship. Heard a call for MVAC shutdown on the second stage. That is SECO 1, taking a quick look inside the control room at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California. And with the conclusion of that first burn of the upper stage, it is now in a parking orbit where it will coast until about T plus 53 minutes, 47 seconds. There will be a brief 2-second burn on that upper stage engine, and that'll set the satellites up for deployment at a time that the NRO and SpaceX have not disclosed. So we'll have to wait for confirmation of payload deployment from SpaceX and or the NRO, whoever decides to publish that information first. Before we go ahead and pivot over to our mission stats, do want to thank a few more folks for your support tonight. It's very much appreciated. Thanks to channel member Chat MTB for a $5 super chat. Says back again. Welcome back, chat. Hope you've been doing well. Appreciate Sausage for a $2 super chat. Thank you so much for your support tonight. Callistia Lee with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Callistia, who says, just wanted to say, hey, while you were missed, Will, Steven did an amazing job filling in. Appreciate you both. Psychonaut69, thanks for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership, and a welcome aboard to whomever was the recipient of that gift. Haley Higgins, hashtag Irish Haley, saying before launch, thanks so much. Can't wait to see from Oceanside, California. Hopefully you were able to get some good views from down there. Tom Laubach, or excuse me, William Laubach says, Tom just caught, I'm assuming caught a view of the rocket, so that's good to hear. Appreciate the $10 super chat. Cynthia Graves with a $5 super chat as well. Appreciate the word of thanks. And a thanks to Chris for a $10 super chat. Appreciate you, Chris. Kicking over to our mission stats that currently stand with a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, tail number 1063, marking its 20th flight in the books. This was also the 371st Falcon 9 launch to date, the 86th Falcon 9 launch of 2024. This was SpaceX's 314th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 89th launch of 2024, including the Falcon Heavy mission in June and 2 Starship launches from down in southern Texas. This was SpaceX's 121st orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 89th from Space Launch Complex 4 East, and the 157th overall orbital launch from Pad 4E. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 100th landing of a booster on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, the 271st SpaceX drone ship landing, and the 345th Falcon booster landing to date. Finally, some industry stats. This one for the books. This was launch number 30 from Vandenberg Space Force Base so far this year. Notable because with this launch, we have now surpassed the 29 total missions that launched from Vandenberg in all of 2023. So we are in new record territory on the year. This was the 93rd orbital launch from U.S. soil so far in 2024, the 102nd orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company, and the 164th orbital launch from around the globe. 6 orbital launch mishaps so far this year. Here's where the pie chart currently stands. U.S. with 102 missions so far, China with 41, Russia with 9, Japan with 4, India with 3, Iran and the European Space Agency with 2, and North Korea with 1 to speak of. And that'll close the books for a double launch day for SpaceX and for us. Really appreciate all of you who've been sticking with us for both live launch coverage opportunities. Of course, the now big question mark for SpaceX missions becomes, will they be able to find good enough weather to move forward with the Polaris Dawn mission, the 4 commercial crew member astronaut mission set to lift off from the pad you see here live on your screen. This is Historic Launch Complex 39A, where you can see the Falcon 9 rocket and crew Dragon Resilience still standing tall and eagerly awaiting their departure. Crew in good spirits by all accounts from their posts on social media, as they are just waiting for weather to improve enough. It's not so much the launch weather, but rather the weather splashdown when they are ready to conclude their 5-day journey just has not been cooperating. And unfortunately, as we showed you earlier today during our Starlink 8-11 mission coverage, the tropics are starting to get a little more active. We are, of course, the heart of hurricane season now. And so that may cause a bit of an issue with finding a good enough stretch of weather for Polaris Dawn to move forward. We'll, of course, keep you posted on any and all updates regarding that mission and when they are able to launch. Eventually, though, SpaceX and NASA do need to flip this pad from a Falcon 9 to a Falcon Heavy configuration in order to support the October launch opportunities for NASA's Europa Clipper mission. It takes about 3 weeks to turn the pad over, or at least it has historically. The senior director of NASA's Launch Services program says that SpaceX has been working to bring down the timeline for converting from one configuration, Falcon 9 to Falcon Heavy, down from 25 days, but TBD exactly how many they will actually need this go around. And again, if you're not already subscribed to Spaceflight Now here on YouTube, now's a good time to do so. Keep up with all of our videos coming down the pike, as well as, of course, all of our live launch coverage opportunities. With that, I want to thank our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of this broadcast, taking over commentary duties last broadcast. I want to thank our wonderful moderators in the live chat. Shout out to Astro Jen, Astro Joe, and Callistia Lee. Stephanie B was helping out earlier today, so thanks to her, as well as to Rusty Shackelford over on Launchpad Live. Mostly want to thank you for wherever you're watching from tonight. Hope you've had a good and productive day and are ready to get back at it tomorrow. We are very close to the weekend. I know you can do it. So for all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.